Hey fellas, and welcome back to Quite with a Y. I just wanted to drop in for another upload to talk about something you definitely don't want to hear about. That's the usual. But I've just been watching a lot of videos on the Flash movie, as is like ritual for me after I watch any movie. Part of the experience is like seeing all the videos in my recommended that I can't see until I've seen the movie, and then binging them when I get home. And it's kind of just put me in the mood to talk about this one specifically, because The Flash is probably one of the nuttiest things I've seen in theaters in ages. This in a year where not only did Puss in Boots come out, but also Across the Spider-Verse, as well as a bunch of other multiverse story stuff that if I had seen 7 years ago, pre the release of Endgame, probably would have given me a hernia. Yeah, The Flash outdoes all of those, and I'm spoiling the entire fucking thing right now because there's absolutely no reason you should be going to theaters to watch this. And I don't say that in a Ezra Miller is a bad person or Warner Bros. Has bad business practices kind of way. I mean, watching the cam rip makes the movie better. Now, I didn't do this myself, and that's usually the cop-out that people say on YouTube so that if, Warner Bros. Exec happens to be watching or a fan of the Quiet channel, they won't strike it down. But I genuinely mean that this time, because I actually did go into theaters to see this, and it was like miserable in there, man. There were so few seats that were sat in. I didn't think it was possible for a theater to get less ass thrown back on it than I do in a week, but that, like, apparently the box office bomb speaks for itself. This is another rambly video because there's just so many random things I want to talk about. I saw The Flash around a week ago. It was my last day in LA. I went out to see it with my boy Nuka, and from the jump, this thing is just fucking rubbery as hell. The CGI never gets good. The first complaint I have is a real minor one, but I have always hated the DC Universe Flash run. It looks so stupid. I hate this weird swimming through time shit. I want him to do like the fucking fast sprinter run, man. It looks so much cooler and confident. I was willing to let it slide in previous movies because the whole idea was that he was like dumb as hell and very new to superheroing back then. But in this movie, we literally see him be a mentor figure to a younger version of himself, and we clearly see he has some level of competence, and he's still like fucking doggy paddling through the Speed Force. Like, what is this? My gold standard for what I think live action super speed should look like is actually a kind of out of the way pick, and it's the Injustice 2 Flash versus Reverse Flash fight cutscene. I know it's all CG animated, but Injustice 2 is one of those games that was trying to push the realistic limits of what a video game could produce, so it acts as a blueprint in my head, like at least a storyboard. Like, just watch this shit real quick. Yeah, it looks sick, and I rewatch that at least on a monthly basis. And I know this is like a nitpick thing, but I'm a vibes aesthetic guy. I do not care about substance, only style. Last complaint I have about the presentation of the super speed is that I hate these slow-mo scenes being the bog standard for live action. The one thing I can say about the Eternals is that they have the best live action super speed abilities shown on screen like ever. Like, they are very, very invigorating and fun to watch. Like, we actually get to see what it looks like from a normal person's perspective, just a dude getting tossed around and fucking mugged. Besides the point, the first scene is absolutely nuts. There's a bunch of babies falling out of a skyscraper hospital that Ezra Miller, famously good around babies, not putting bullets in their mouth or anything like that, starts like ragdolling and slowly moving the babies in a way that's supposed to not hurt them. It's very reminiscent of that first Quicksilver scene in X-Men, which is nuts to me that Quicksilver had an iconic film moment before the fucking Flash. We arguably didn't get a good Flash scene until he started time traveling in the Snyder Cut. But yeah, that's the scene where he puts the baby in the microwave and it lands, and I'm just trying to ignore a lot of the timey-wimey shit. I'm not gonna lie to y'all, during my viewing of the movie, I kind of went in thinking I was gonna have to hand-wave a lot of the inconsistencies in internal logic. Like, Barry's clothes catch on fire from going too fast, and sometimes he can't move people otherwise they puke, or he could like give them whiplash. But then there are other times where he can just like move babies around in the air without a care. There's a whole lot of contradictions with the previous movies, whether this takes place in the Snyder Cut universe or the Justice League universe. It doesn't really matter because that's nothing new to the DCEU. I just kind of went in accepting that, yeah, this is gonna be something I have to ignore. All I've done up till now is complain, and would you guys believe that on the whole, I liked this movie? Genuinely, I had a more positive experience than not, and I went in thinking I was gonna have an absolutely dogshit time. I was not giving this movie any leeway. Again, no notes, so I'm just kind of picking out random moments from the movie. If you've seen them, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's weird that Michael Keaton was the one who explained it, but out of all the movies that have at least tried to explain their multiverse or how time travel worked in their universe, I liked the spaghetti metaphor a lot. I don't know why. Don't get me wrong, the metaphor is completely incorrect. Even as far as the movie's concerned, it it breaks the rules it established like fucking right away. I just liked it in concept. I'm taking it in a vacuum here, alright? And Michael Keaton lends a good amount with his voice. Speaking of Michael Keaton, I really thought this was gonna be a more phoned-in performance than it was, but nah, it felt like for the most part, outside of like some phoned-in lines, he was really like giving a performance. Like, it seemed like he was mostly there for a check, but he wasn't like doing nothing on set, you know? I think the non-Flash action set pieces are pretty good. Both Ben Affleck Batman and Michael Keaton Batman get like really cool stuff to do. I'm glad Batfleck got like one more scene doing cool shit before his character is retired forever. And it makes no sense that Michael Keaton at 80 can do any of this shit, or that he's in this universe at all, but the scenes where Keaton is fighting and you know it's not him because they never show his face, and also he's fucking 80, no duh. Like, the movement's convincing. As far as Supergirl in this movie, I don't think I'm saying her name right, Sasha Call, I believe. She did a great job. I really loved her performance, and if there's a Supergirl movie that actually gets the go-ahead, I would love to see her return in the role. If you're not a big fan of how the Superman fights were handled in Man of Steel, you're probably not gonna go crazy for her just like doing the same shit to Zod 10 years later with somehow worse CGI, but I found her like performance compelling, and God, I wish I was her. I originally thought this was gonna be the thing that sank the movie the most, but weirdly having two Ezra Millers on screen kind of works out. Listen, the first Flash movie released in theaters, it got announced back when the Flash show was first starting. It's only now just come out after the Flash show has ended 10 seasons on, and it's in the middle of a universe where the Flash has existed for like, what, 6-7 years at least? It's him deep into his career, and as iconic as that character is, I feel like his origin isn't as well known as you might think. The Flash, from his inception, maybe even more than like a Miles Morales recently, is a character that's always been tied in with the idea of time travel in the multiverse. There's like no way you can tell a lot of his stories without dipping your toes into that. Whereas a lot of the Marvel stuff had the luxury of not going into that until they had cleared up their, we'll say, slightly more grounded Infinity Saga. And because of that, I think having two Barry Allens, one who never became the Flash and is just now learning, was a good way to communicate to new people the Flash's origin, while also establishing that the Flash we're familiar with is an experienced version of the character. It keeps everybody up to date, and it gives us a frame of reference for where Barry was like 7 years ago, and what he'd be like if he didn't have the tragedy that happened to him happen to him. Speaking of which, everything with Barry and his mom in this movie is just really well done. It's emotionally succinct. I like it. The one thing I cannot blame this mess of a movie on is, of all things, the director. In fact, I am so surprised it came out as coherent as it did, having passed through this many revisions and shit. Like, the Batfleck movie got turned into the Batman because of how many fucking topsy-turns it went through. The fact that this stayed one project with Ezra Miller attached to it through the entire thing is nuts. The production of this movie is fucking unbelievable. I think his name is Andre Muschietti. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with his work. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But apparently he's set to maybe direct the Batman Brave and the Bold movie that James Gunn is heading now that he's in charge of DC. And honestly, considering what he's managed to do with Batman in this movie, as fucking hard as it must have been to pull off, I'm genuinely excited for that because it was all good. Batfleck's suit just does not look good in the daytime though. They need to stop fucking putting it there. I do kind of like how they visualize traveling through time or the multiverse in this movie. It's like Barry is in this ball of lightning at the bottom of a coliseum, and he's seeing all the alternate versions or ways he can fuck up the past and future as the crowd. It just spins around and fucks up as things go awry. It's neat, and I also like the design of the mystery speedster, who we later find out is that like younger Flash. And I won't lie to you, with the further I got into this movie and the consequences of Barry's actions like panning out and like how much he just kept doubling down, I'm gonna be honest, I think Ezra Miller just went method for this role, because holy shit, the Barry Allen from the mainline DC universe ruins everything for so many fucking people. Supposedly the universe where his mom is still alive is actually meant to be like a parallel timeline. It's not an altered past that Barry created, he just switched dimensions. He goes there, meets a version of himself who had his mom growing up and is working his way through life as a relatively normal person, and he just fucking destroys it. He's like, you're gonna get superpowers now because I might stop existing if you don't. And then like, because he's forced this kid who has had no experience with all this shit and throws him into the deep end of, oh yeah, we're time traveling now, something I didn't even have to think about until like multiple years into my Flash career. He throws him in the deep end with no experience, expects him to not make the same mistakes he did as a kid, and because he pressured this guy into a position he really had no business being in. He didn't even have the metal from like having his mother die when he's young to like make him a little more resilient to tragedy. So it's like his fault he turned him into a villain because you literally forced him to get superpowers, dog. Also, those babies are definitely fucking dead. Last thing I want to talk about is the cameo scene at the end. Y'all know what I'm talking about. First things first, I really like that Nick Cage cameo. That's the type of multiverse stuff I think I have the most appreciation for. Things that we haven't actually gotten to see on screen. If you don't know, Nick Cage was at one point meant to be cast as Superman in a 90s Kevin Smith movie. I don't remember where it came from, but apparently one of the higher-ups demanded that Superman could not be able to fly in that movie and had to fight a giant spider at some point. It's a very inside baseball niche cut of something to reference, but I honestly feel like that's a fun way of doing it, showing us an alternate universe of like, what our own reality could have been if that movie got made instead of, say, Superman Returns. The Jay Garrick one was fun enough. There was a lot of like old-timey Batman shit. Just the really harmless things I didn't mind, even if it was like very excessive and that scene could have been almost entirely removed from the movie and it would have been just fine, or exactly the same plot. What is fucking gross is that Christopher Reeve cameo. Not just the fact that him and the Supergirl actress from back then look like soft cheese, legit ripped straight out of Madame Tussauds and put in front of a green screen, but also because Christopher Reeves is dead and you're essentially puppeting his corpse as like a cheap, ooh, I saw that movie, my mom saw that movie. It's fucking stupid. I hate it. The Nick Cage one as well was just a CG cameo. They didn't even get him to like suit up for a funny little line or two. They just fucking put the model on. The Christopher Reeves one is just really fucking gross to me in general. The whole digital de-aging thing has kind of been okay, so when's somebody gonna use it in an unforgivable way? And I think that's right here. All that said, there's probably a lot of comments that'll come to mind after I've already uploaded this video, but generally speaking, the Flash movie is a mess and probably shouldn't have come out. But I'm glad it did because it's a mess, and it's fucking horrendous. A horrendous mess that I somehow still have a generally positive opinion of. I gotta do some meditation. I'm not being very internally consistent right now. If you guys have any thoughts on The Flash, let me know. If you guys want to send me topics, anything to talk about, hit that kwytebox@gmail.com. Anyways, yeah, piss off.